Hey everyone, how's everyone doing tonight? Hope you had a wonderful, happy holidays. Hope you guys had a wonderful, happy New Year. So I think we're going to get started. We have a pretty chill, like drawing and doodling session for today. I'm kind of in a musical mood, so I think what I'll do is, I think I'll draw a band, and not just any band, but just a small group like playing their own garage, and they're just jamming out, they're just having a good time. So what I think what I'll do is, I'll start off probably one of the band members right here. So let me start again the overall pose. I think we'll have him be a guitarist, and maybe he's like a rock guitarist. If right now he's just shredding on the thing. So let me get the overall rough pose for him ready to go. Runner is kind of filling out his pose. His head. Let me get his arms. Let me get the actual guitar right here. Let me make sure that's a little visible. Let me get his little legs at the bottom. And maybe he knows it's a rocker. Maybe he's got a long, like rocker hair. So let's go and give him some of that here. Get this guitar shot. Let me get the little head of his guitar. All right, that's looking pretty good. So now let's refine his features a little bit more. Let me get his little fierce expression. This guy's just rocking out. Let me get his nose. Let me get his mouth. Let me get this side of his shirt. Make sure I get the guitar strap. Let me get the edge of his shirt. Make sure I get his arms. Make sure those are a little bit more pronounced. Let me get his hand. The hand has to be plucking the side of the strings. Let me bring out the whole hollow guitar just a little bit more. We have the little plug right here, so he's clearly playing an electric guitar. Make sure his knees, his legs more pronounced here. You get his other leg here. We bring out the neck of the guitar a little bit more here. Let me get his arm where his other hand is right here. Got his thumb here at the top. You see how it's got his curl around the neck of his guitar. I'm just gonna read the shape of the neck of his guitar here. Hmm. Now that we got our own guitars, our kind of little rock guitars, let's go and compare our trio. So I think right here we got our string section. Now let's have our ribbon section, well, at least half of it, which is going to be our drummer. So let me start with drawing the pose of our drummer here. And of course, he's going to be sitting down. Because usually in most drum sets, you have to sit down and play them. Granted, there are some smaller sets where some can stand up and play. I know one example of, I think, drummer from Stray Cats back in the 80s. When he would play drums, he would play them standing up. So that was like a neat, like, change of pace. Get the big sniff, get the big drums, get one of the smaller ones on the side. Think about the snare. Think about add one of the other one drums right here. And also, as I'm drawing the drums, I'm also drawing a little kickstands they're on too. Also, another stand for the cymbals. And these cymbals are these huge, like long discs. And I also, like I mentioned before in other streams, like whenever you draw it, it helps you bring around like simple shapes. Like see, even for these drum sets, as of right now, they're basically just like those circles and cylinders. And here, for these cylinders, basically these long ovals, kind of like a triangular point at the top. So we break things down to smaller shapes. It really does help make things a lot simpler. Let me draw this guy a little bit more. Let me actually put the drumsticks here. Get one at the top. Get his head here. I think I'm gonna give him glasses. Just some cool shades for him to play. Let me get his shirt. Let's partially by this symbol. Let me get his pictures of the arm is kind of partially noticeable. The same for this one here. Now his wrist kind of bent at an angle. Hmm. Maybe something I can do later on. Let me just kind of felt the drum set, makes it a little more pronounced. All right, so now that we got, our drummer in place, now let's add our third component because we got our strings, we got the first separated section. Now let's do our third, which is going to be, our bassist. And let's have him be like a lefty bassist too. So we kind of quickly draw out his gesture. Good overall gesture, get that overall posture ready to go. And once I got that, now I'll start filling out the pose. You kind of fill his guitar, his little bass guitar. We get the little neck. One thing I always remember with bass guitars, they tend to have longer necks compared to just regular guitars. That's something to always keep in mind. We draw his head. We draw his shirt. Yeah, I figure they're all gonna be in casual clothes. Since these guys are probably just jamming out in the garage or jamming out like on set before I have a big performance, so there's no need to dress out. They're just kind of jamming, just having a good old time. Have his hand probably more open-ended here compared to his closed fist here. Let me get his legs. Let me kind of draw the expression, and maybe he's kind of really focused, really trying to get those intricate bass lines popping out from his instrument. You feel his body a little bit more. I notice it's a little more scrawny. Let's thicken him up just a bit. There we go. We first add a little strap here. Make sure I get his arms here. We get his hands right here because they're bending on the neck of his guitar. If I bring out the body of his bass guitar a little bit more, let me bring the neck out a little bit more too. There we go. Really stick out. I think I have to stick out in front of the drummer since he is in front of the drummer. Now the shirt come down a little to the bottom here. I think another thing I will do since the since this guy's plugged in, let me have a little cord for his amp. I can come down, come around to this one little amp right here. And they probably got a little speaker they're using close where they can actually hear what they're doing. Same for this guy. He's got to be amped up as well. I think I'll have this kind of partially hidden in the background. This is an idea that I'm thinking about doing. Yeah, little bits at the top so it's a little more noticeable. All right, so we've got our actual trio here, our little power trio. Now that we got the rough sketches all ready to go, let's start refining a little bit more. So I can see we used our red pen to kind of do all of our initial sketches. Let's start going over with, our blue pen. And I think I'll start with our guitarist first. So I'm gonna start, with this guy, like fierce expression, like he's probably really into it, probably killing a really bad like guitar solo, a really awesome one. So let's get all our facial expression down. Let me get his hair, make sure that's nice and curly. Let me get his shirt. Let me also get the guitar strap, make sure that's a little more visible. I think it was as visible before, so we'll make sure it's more visible now. quickly run a we get the edges of his shirt, we get his arms, thumb of his hand, his little guitar pick to really play all those notes. We get the guitar in, get the overall shape. Now I got the hollow body, let's get the neck going. And now for the other arm, let me make sure you get the hands going for this one too, because now we got the little fingers curling around the neck. I said once, like I said before, hands are always tricky to draw, but I always need to try to remember how to practice, drawing them. Let's get the legs. We get his shoes. We get the plug for the car. Also, let me draw some extra details on guitar itself. He's add these little buttons, these little gear. That kind of decorating the side of the guitar. Always add these little tuners. It's looking pretty good. So we have the part, and I think what I'll probably have him do, since I have this amp going behind him, I think I'll have it do is have it come down, kind of drag on the floor. I think what I'll do as I'm coming down, I'm gonna start off pretty thick, but as I go further towards the back, I'm kind of thinning out just a bit because it's going further into the back because the amp is way behind them. I want to make sure their amp is visible off in the distance. There we go. I got some shading on for the other hollow body, just to have a little more definition. Here we go. That's looking pretty well. Since we got our guitars from flush, let's move on to our drummer now. Actually, you know what? Let me do a bassist, since he's kind of up front and center too. So let me start with this guy's like facial features. Get more of a longer nose, a longer round nose. There's been thick eyebrows. Get his ears. Let me get his hair. Get his neck. Let me get his guitar strap as well, well, bass guitar strap in this case. It's gotta be a thick one too, because because you have a big instrument like a bass guitar, you want to make sure you have a big strap that's gonna be strong to hold it up, or else you'll have a huge problem on your hands there. Let me get his arm. Yeah. I think with him, he'll probably just be plucking his fingers. It's probably a little bit harder than doing it with a guitar pick. Get the body of his bass guitar going. Get the overall shape. Actually, bring that out just a little bit more. We get the neck going. It comes up to the head. Then we get his arm going here. Then we get his hand. Have his little thumb come out here. Then we get his legs. Here we go. Let's get his shoes in as well. I'm not basing these guys off any particular music group in general. I'm just kind of winging on just on different ones I like. Granted, there's a lot of like different like musical trios that I like bands like they're just three people. One for example is of course Jimi Hendrix Experience. That was just a group of just three people. I love them. Like they were one of my very first like musicians I really got into as far as rock music goes. And another good like rock trio, and of course there's Stray Cats with Brian Setzer. Of course, I have more of a rockabilly theme going on because with the bass, instead of playing full Fender bass here, he had a huge double bass, which are really big and heavy, and they're low and they're hard to carry around, which is impressive. Then you got other ones like Rush, that's a great trio. Nirvana, that was another great trio as well. You're surprised that you can get a lot of great sound with just three people. Husker Du, that's another great one. A really underrated group, by the way, as well. In fact, let's start working on our drummer here. Let's make his drum set more pronounced. I think he's got a pretty standard drum set. You have some drum sets that are very big, and some that are very small. Like for example, like the late Neil Peart from Rush, he had a huge drum set where they pretty much went all around him. Where you probably couldn't really see him. They knew how to really play those drums well. He could do everything he could, with those drums. I feel like once you get into actually playing music and know what type of instrument you like, you can customize it best you feel. You might want a smaller set, you might want a bigger set. At the end of the day, like you end up suiting your instrument that works to your taste and works to your strengths. Let's get a little cymbal stand here. There we go. Also, let's find our drummer's expression a little bit more here. Ooh, sorry, let's hit the camera for a moment. My mistake. Let me get his little nose here. It's fine. You can see they're all in the zone. I feel like once you get a good song going, once you're all in sync, that's when you know you got a good session going. Of course, like most of the musical trios I already mentioned, I haven't unfortunately had a chance to really see any of them live. I think one great musical trio that I saw really good a while back would have to be it was a psychedelic group called Worthless. a psychedelic rock group. It was just 3 people. They played at a very small venue in my hometown, and they were really good. In fact, they played like they only played like 3 songs, but like 2 of them were really long songs. Then they went, I think, like 30, 40 minutes. But they were fantastic because it was really trippy, just really atmospheric. I loved every minute of it. And what's funny is that like in between like the 2 jam songs they did, I think they had one like cover of Led Zeppelin song, Michigan Breakdown, which is my favorite song. But I think that's but also like a nice little intermission before like the next big jam. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't mind seeing them again. Okay, what another pretty good trio? I know there is another interview with Glass Heart from the guitarist Phil Glasser. He often did some really great stuff with his guitar. Like he could play guitar and he could do flute too. Let me get the little amp right behind him. And also, I just realized got that extra details for his bass guitar here. At the little edge where the strings are, add the little tuners, add the little plug. Let me add this little cord. Have a thick cord that'll get snared that goes further towards the back because the amp is farther in the back. All right, so I think we're looking pretty good here with our trio. So I think now our next thing we could probably do, I think now we'll start adding some extra shading in. We'll start shading it. I think I'll do is start shading this guy's hair. And that's gonna go in a simple like cross hatching pattern. And I think it's gonna have the light source from over here. Since it's coming from this side, the shadow's gonna be facing opposite direction. So that's what we'll go ahead and do. And just really bring this guitarist to life. Honestly, looking at it now, he kind of almost looks like Kurt Cobain from Nirvana a little bit. That was another pretty cool trio too. They're not one of my top favorites from the grunge scene, but you know what? What they did, they were pretty good. I know what Nirvana. I think probably my favorite song, "Surprise" was actually one of their early songs, "Love Buzz." That was actually a cover of an old psychedelic tune by a group called Shocking Blue back in the '60s. What was cool was that, like, even though it was very grungy and very hard rock sounding, they still kept that psychedelic edge that I really did like. So yeah, that's one of my favorite songs by them. Oh yeah, I think one trio I just did see, Government Mule with Warren Hayes. Saw them at a free show I think a couple years back. They put on a really good show. I know also at the end of the show they also play a little Brothers tunes as well, which makes sense because Warren Hayes, for a brief while he actually did play for the Allman Brothers group. I don't know. I don't know if he still plays with them now. Probably not. But he did play with them for a good while. His sound is very much rooted in that southern rock sound which they were known for. And I definitely wouldn't mind seeing him again either. He was a fantastic guitarist. Let me add a little shadow beneath him. Yeah, so as I'm progressively adding more and more shadows, I'm keeping very light, first making darker and darker marks as I'm going in. Once I've established what type of marks I want. I think what I do, I make this guitar strap all dark. That way it'll stick out a little bit more. I think I'll move on to our bassist next, as far as adding more shading here. Like I bring his little fingers more. looks like he's probably doing like a fun like finger slapping technique for the bass. There's a quite a few basses I really like that Cheney use that finger slapping technique. Larry Graham from Sly and the Family Stone, he was probably one of the first people to really try to perfect that technique. The other guys like Stanley Clark, he did a great job at that. Jaco from Weather Report. And granted, they were more of like a jazz music group, but he really kind of helped that bring that rock element to their sound. Maybe kind of bring out the body of his guitar a little bit more. And kind of color in this guy's hair. Taking out his eyebrows. I think all of his hairline kind of dipped down a bit. Yeah, I think it looks much nicer. We got the little tuners here as well. I forgot to add those. There we go. We start adding some shading along the side of his neck. We go down his arm, go down his shirt. And I'm going to shade in his guitar strap too. Well, bass guitar strap, really. We get right here. That's looking pretty good. I know one of the guitar cheers I mentioned, music cheers I mentioned before, Stray Cats, Brian Setzer. Well, I haven't had a chance to really see Stray Cats live. I think the closest I did see was probably seeing Brian Setzer when he did with his what was that group he had? Brian Setzer Orchestra. So that was a kind of big band. And while even though like that he normally does like a rock with a mix of a huge big like horns, and trumpets and all that jazz, like what he'll do like in the middle of the sets, like he'll have all the horn sections kind of come away, and it's just a trio where it's just him, like the double basses and a drummer, and that's kind of that whole rock with thing like he used to do with Stray Cats. And it's like a nice like little change of pace like compared to all like the jazzy stuff he would normally do, with that group. He's a fantastic guitarist, by the way. I definitely recommend checking him out nowadays as well. I don't know if he's still touring now because I think the last time I went to go see him, well, I was supposed to go see him, they had canceled tour because apparently he has tinnitus now, which that's no good. But as far as I know, I think he might still be performing. Got more shading around his legs. He had the shadow around his feet. Then you have some famous shows that only lasted like for a very short while. I know there was one I remember reading about a while back with three famous musicians. They're more famous than jazz scene. John McLaughlin, really famous like jazz and guitarist. Tony Williams, who was known for playing with Miles Davis, and Jacob Astoria, he's known from Weather Report. And to my knowledge, they only did like a few shows. I think they only did one live show. I think it ended very quickly because I guess they didn't get along that well. But I couldn't imagine, like being the same with all three of those guys like playing together because they all had a really unique sound. All right, that's looking pretty good. Let me move on to our drummer next. Oh, also another trio. I know I mentioned Hendrix earlier. I know as far as trios, I think my favorite would have to be probably his trio of Band of Gypsies. And for those that don't really know much about Hendrix, so he had a couple of groups, but I know it's famous with, of course, the Jim Hendrix Experience. And that's where he had the hits like Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, Hey Joe. We had his big hits, but I know later on, I think near like the very last week, last year of his life, he had formed another group called Band of Gypsies. And in that one, he recorded, I think, two of his army was from an army brothers like Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. One of them, Buddy Miles, actually had a band of his own called Electric Flag before he had joined the band with him. And that was a little bit different what he normally did because instead of the kind of psychedelic rocks that he was known for, he started doing a lot more like funk, a lot more funky, like funk rock stuff, which was different what he was used to doing, but it was really, really neat. I actually really still have that album, like Band of Gypsies. It has all like classic, I think it has Machine Gun, Who Knows? That's another classic from him. Even Buddy Miles, he does his song, Them Chains, that was always like his signature song. But unfortunately, that group didn't last too long either. We start shading in his drum set. We shade the side of his big drum here, his little kick drum. I make sure I can see the knee of his leg here. Let me bring like those kickstands down a little bit further. Get the underside of this drum here. And kind of get underneath this cymbal here, add some little shading right here. That's looking pretty good. I think another good tree I remember seeing a while back, it was the proto punk group Death. It was the like brothers from Detroit. And they had the 70s. And like they're considered using one of the godfathers of punk because they kind of had that old proto punk sound. Because they came out, I think, right after the edge of, with like the Who, was that M65? They were very much inspired by those guys. And for years, like they went unsigned because they didn't want to change their name. But now today, now they're seeing they got a new album out. They're playing to a lot more people than they were playing back then. I saw them in that small club a couple of years ago. They really brought down the house. And they're fantastic. And some of the stuff kind of remind me of Hendrix stuff too. If it had a more like punkier direction, more punkier hard rock direction. Shane on his shirt here. There we go. We have some shading around his leg. I think he'll add some shadows down here underneath his feet. Yeah, that's machine underneath the bottom of this drum set here. Believe it or not, there's still some like famous trio groups I haven't really gotten around to checking out yet. Like I still haven't really checked out Cream yet. Which is surprising because I consider one of the legendary like supergroup trios right there. You know, like Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker. That's one of the famous like power trios right there. But I haven't really gotten to checking them out yet. I don't know why. Like for some reason, I hadn't really taken out the time. Even though I do like that song "Sunshine Your Love," like that song. Oh, of course, another good trio I wish I had got a chance to see, Stevie Ray Vaughan from Double Trouble, and they had that blues rock song, kind of similar how Hendrix used to do. But, Stevie he had his own unique spin to it. Would really love to have seen him live. So let me start filling out these amps. Fill it out a bit more here. Let me shape the side of it here. Love those extra shadows from the amps as well, especially for this one. Just so be more clear that it's further in the back. Yeah, so I'll have the shadow here. Maybe I'll bring out the little chord here later on. I'll go back to black. Some shadows. Arm here. Got some here. There we go. Yeah, I think we're looking pretty good here now. So since we got our major shading done, let's start going more of some black. Let's use our black pen here and start going really dark here. We start going on his hair to go completely dark. Go dark on his glasses. I'm gonna go on one corner just in case a little bit shading. But I still want to have that little highlight right here. So right now, what I'm gonna do is kind of start coloring like the darker areas, and I'm also outlining the characters as well. I'm gonna make sure I have some thick outlines. I want to make sure they pop against the background. So I try to keep their outlines thick. Okay, there's drumstick here, drumstick here. Outline this symbol, also a symbol stand. You get the drum set. I know another musical trio I've really got into lately is Soul Live. Now they're a little different because they're really more of a soul jazz group, but they have a different setup where it's really you have one guy on guitar, they have one guy on drums, and also a guy on organ too, a Hammond B organ to be exact. And while you have this one guy on him, he's playing on the keys, and he's also has little bass pedals at the bottom. You can just kind of get that lower and those lower rhythm sections going. And it creates a pretty unique sound. In fact, they're pretty popular among like the jazz, but also kind of that jam band community because they'll play like the really long shows too. Because I thought it was a lot of like those jazz, especially those jam blends. Like they could play shows like maybe as short as maybe an hour to like well over 3 hours, depending on the event or venue. I know the Earthless show, like that group I mentioned earlier, that was kind of like a psychedelic sound. I think all their show was, I'd say, two. I want to say it was about 2.5 hours. So I know the first track was probably about, maybe it was less than that. I think the first track was about like 40 minutes. Then there was a cover of Led Zeppelin's Creation Breakdown in the middle, which was about 2 minutes. And then the next song they did, that was like an hour. There we go. Let's start bringing up guitars. I think I'll make his outline a little bit thicker, since he's further up front. Have them nice and thick. And he have his hair going. We get around his arm, around his shirt collar, the side of his guitar here too. And bring that chord down. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker down here, especially when I get in the shadow here. Here we go. Get a little bit shade for the amp here as well. I'm gonna do a thick outline for his amps in the back. Since they're further in the back, I don't want to give him a thick outline, so I'll keep these very thin. And I don't really have like a I don't know if I said I have like a favorite like musical trio. I have favorites, but I don't think I have a single favorite. But I tell you one I think he'll come back to a lot. I know I've mentioned before, it's probably Husker Du. So, Husker Du, a little bit of history of them, they were actually initially more like a punk band, but they're more inspired by Ramones, where they kind of play music like really fast, like very raw and very heavy. But over time, as they play, like they start, like incorporate a lot of elements. They start doing more psychedelic stuff. They start doing bits of country. They start becoming a lot more melodic, and they really start diversifying their sound. It's such a short time span too, because like they were only together for about 6 years, but their sound changed so much like within like those 6 years. And probably my favorite album is probably I think one of their Pulseness albums, like In the Living End. It was a live album. because, like, that was what they were known for. They were known for that they're really, like, loud and explosive live shows. 'Cause to be honest, like, their studios don't really do them justice. They have this really thin sound, but when you hear them live, especially if I think you go on YouTube, you can probably find a performance of them live, they had a very, like, heavy, like, wall of sound just stored, like, psychedelic madness, and it was beautiful madness too. Bring on his legs more here. Bring out the feet. Straighten his hair a little bit more. And bring the strap down more here. Also, we kind of make those strings a little bit more pronounced. Didn't realize I hadn't done that till now. Add a little bit to the fretboard. There's still like other like trio rock bands I still need to check out because I know there is an indie group like Dispatch. I've heard they're pretty good, and even though that's just three guys, I need to give them a check out. 'Cause I've heard they're fantastic. I'm always kind of checking out like different music, see what actually catches my attention, and just trying out to see if it's something I actually like. 'Cause I tend to listen a lot of like different types of music, so I'm always gonna come across something that'll catch my attention. Shells a little deeper here. There we go. I think we're looking good. So I think what I'll do now is I think I'll kind of alternate between using the purple and the red just to kind of add some extra shading, just kind of really just kind of make it a lot more lively. Because now that I've already established all the shadows that I want, now it's just a matter of like filling them out, like embellishing them. And it's really just making these guys come to life. Yeah, so I'm just kind of lightly going over the shadows I've done, just very light, delicate strokes, just like delicate cross-section strokes. But yeah, like Husker Du, and probably Band of Gypsies and Stray Cats. Those would probably be probably my top 3, like, favorite, like, rock trios. I just feel, those are good trios. They've had so much variety in just in the different sounds they made, just great people. But also it's proof to show that even when it comes to making great music, you actually don't need a lot of musicians to make a great sound and have a big sound. You can even have a big sound with just 3 people. Yeah, a little more color to his hair. Underneath his neck. By the way, once again, I hope you guys are having a really, like, wonderful time tonight. Hope you are just taking it easy, just relaxing, especially now that the holidays are over. Now you have to now that New Year's is over, you don't have to worry about, like, shopping, having to, like, traveling here and there. Now you just got more to decompress. Yeah, I'm actually liking how all this is turning out. I was really unsure how this was gonna turn out at first when I started on this, but I'm over liking, how the end result's turning out so far. I really am. I think I'll add some little marks here to keep marks here. Make sure I get him here as well. Also, I forgot about another great trio, The Jam. Now they were also kind of more like a punk group that came out like UK, like back like late '70s, early '80s. And they were kind of an interesting one too, because they were very short lived, but they had a really diverse sound. Because of course, starting with punk sound, like they would do a lot more like old school, like Brit pop, like sound stuff from like the Beatles. But then they would take influence like from Motown. They were into it from funk. And they did that a lot, like, especially on their very last album. They only did, I think, 3 or 4 albums, like, in the 4 years they're together, and before, their guitars ended splitting them up, which I don't think he should have. I think they had enough in to do, like, 1 more album, like, before they end up breaking up, because they had a really kinda unique sound, especially in the punk thing around that time. Let me get his arms here. Let me move my hand so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Like I said, I'm just kinda lightly overlapping, going over some of the strings I've already done, and I'm just enhancing them. Yeah, I tend to like to use like like red and the blue colors. I just think like these colors just work together so well. Yeah, that's why I like using them when I sketch, like I'm doing for tonight. Kind of shade his arm here. It's kind of partially hidden. I think another trio I haven't seen live, ZZ Top. I haven't seen it, but I've heard they're pretty good live. He has some shadow on his face. I'm just slowly just filling him out, just more and more with each mark I make. Add some shading here. Right, and then shadow on his arms here. All right, let me go back over it with the blue again. Let me get some right here. There we go. I think I'll just go a little darker. Pretty dark leg here. There we go. I know I said earlier before, yeah, I'm actually surprised how well this is turning out. I was not expecting this sketch to turn out like this and what it was tonight. But here we are. And all it took was me just being patient and working on it. That's important to have whenever you're sketching is to always be patient because you may not like how it looks like in the beginning, but it can look much better if you keep on working on it, tweaking it, just seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. You bring out its color a little bit more here. And the neck here, bring out those strings. There we go. These little dark pockets here. Yeah, because I think we'll be pretty done with this pretty soon. So right now, what I'm basically doing is kind of like fine touching it, just kind of finalizing, just touching over things I might have missed. Yeah, because as I go out, every time I come in, I always want to try to make sure I do at least one or two done tonight. I tend to do that just about any night I'm on here, just start doing at least one or two drawings. Let me go with the black a little bit more. There we go. We darken the shadows underneath him, underneath our guitars. Also, we darken the shadows underneath our drummer, and of course our bassist. And you know what? Also, I just remember another great musical trio I saw a while back. Reverend Horton Heat. Now they kind of remind me a little bit of Stray Kids, that Billy sound. They kind of more of a modern twist because that cat came up during that whole punk scene. So they have more kind of aggressive twist of like kind of what Stray Cats was doing. I've seen them at least twice. They put on a fantastic show. Yeah, Reverend Horton. I was trying to think of that group, but that's what it was right there. Reverend Horton Heat. Hmm, let me see what else I can do. I think I'll start kind of shading the background just a little bit. I'll do something fairly simple. Go in a singular direction all around the silhouettes of these musicians. To make these small, uniform strokes. Yeah, I think this would be a nice touch to make the characters pop a bit more. Go around the amp here. I can see them always kind of going the same direction going across. There's a few other like rock trios I'm thinking of right now. Unfortunately, I can't think of any more at the moment. As I'm finishing this up, then one more might come to me. The only other thing, like, odd, like, power trio that I can think of is a short one. This involved, like, an avant-garde, like, jazz guitarist, like, David Bailey. I'm normally not too a huge fan of his work, like, his stuff is a little too out there for me, a little too sparse, but probably one of my favorite stuff he did, and probably one of the most bizarre, yeah, he paired up with 2 other, like, avant-garde drummers, I think, Roland Shan Jackson on drums and, I think Jamul Takuma on bass. And what ended up happening is having this almost punky, but also like jazzy, like funky sound. I know that's 3 things that should not go together, and it sounds like a huge mismatch, but it's a mismatch that somehow works. If only I can remember the name of that album. So I'm gonna keep adding a few more strokes. I think I'll go over some of the ones I already made just to kind of add a little more depth to it. Yeah, like just about like any like musician that I do like, especially if I know if that person, I always try to go out and try to see them when I can. Because it's one thing to listen, on records, another thing to see them live. Because like when I saw Reverend Horton Heat, like I was already familiar with their albums. Of course, I had a few of their albums, I had a few of their songs, Jimbo, Psychobilly Freakout. That's their big one. That's my favorite by them. It was great, hear a song on stage, but to hear them in person, live with the energy of the crowd, it really kind of elevates that experience. 'Let me bring up the shout a bit more from the amp here. I think what I'll go ahead and do, let me darken some of these shadows on our players here. Darken just a bit more. Darken a bit more. We definitely darken underneath our drummer here. And okay, I think we are done for tonight. And you know what? Since I've been talking about power trios, I'm gonna call it exactly that. Power trio. A power trio that's jamming out. And guys, I appreciate you all for actually sitting out there and stream, just kind of just sitting down, just kind of doodling with me, just kind of relaxing. 'Cause I want to be very relaxing stream. And I hope to be here tomorrow. If I'm not here tomorrow, I definitely should be here on the same time next week. Until then, all you guys have a wonderful night. Stay safe. Good night.